lot more people would start farming if you could get on land for 3%. And then there's already tractor loans and stuff. Tractors, there is already 0% financing like Kubota has and stuff like that. But if you could get on land for not having to put 30%, you know how many more people would have access to land? Every different race, gender, creed will be going on land. I hear people in all spectrums of life wanting to be on land, wanting to connect with nature, wanting to grow their own food. But we don't have a banking product for that. Why? We literally print money out of thin air. Why don't we print money out of thin air to secure our local food systems, which is a national security issue, largely ignored by both sides of the aisle, because we are outsourcing every bite of our food to the cheapest hourly wage from all around the world, just like we do with our fashion, our tech, and so many other things.
Welcome to Care More, Be Better, a podcast for people like you who care about the social impact of conscious companies and everyday heroes. Hear inspiring stories from those who put people and planet before profit and personal gain. You'll learn how you can make a difference, vote with your dollars, and get involved today. Here's your host, Karina Belizzi.
Welcome to Care More, Be Better, a podcast for people like you who care about our communities, our planet, and the choices we make to build a better future. Today's guest brings a story of radical transition from vegan chef and Los Angeles restaurateur to regenerative farmer, mother of four, and outspoken advocate for soil health and personal sovereignty. Mollie Engelhart joins me to talk about her new book, Debunked by Nature. It details her journey into motherhood, land stewardship, and ultimately a philosophical and political transformation. While many in the regenerative movement work to bridge divides and deepen ecological and social justice, Mollie's story also challenges dominant narratives within both progressive and environmentalist spaces. This conversation will undoubtedly explore where we align and where tensions may emerge across questions of food, freedom, family, and political identity. Before we get started, remember to follow us on whatever platform you're picking this up. This will ensure you're among the first to learn of new podcast episodes, and by doing so, you're actually helping to make the world a little greener and more regenerative, because we plant a tree for every follow on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and on our newsletter at caremorebebetter.com. This is through our partnership with Forest Planet, who's presently working to restore mangrove forests in Africa. Together, we've planted 24,251 trees. That's only this year. So join us. Let's help Earth regenerate. With that, let's welcome Mollie Engelhart back to the show. Welcome to the show, Mollie.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, when we last connected, you were still dealing with many of the challenges of being a restaurateur in California. We were emerging from the COVID pandemic, so it kind of gives people a snapshot to remember where we might have connected in the past. And a lot has really changed since then. So I hope that you can give us a taste of your origin story, referring back to that earlier conversation as we catch up. So what took you from founding Sage Vegan Bistro in LA to now running regenerative farms in both California and Texas?
So as I have been an environmentalist my whole life, I was super committed to the environment, and I had these restaurants, and I realized that food waste was this huge blind spot for most people, and that methane in the putrefying food is this huge, kind of gray area that we don't talk about. We talk about green new energy. We talk about this. We talk about that. We talk about drive a electric car, but nobody's going to get rich off of making sure that people don't throw their food waste away. So it kind of is just like a fringe issue. And when I started to realize how big of an issue it is, and started to realize how much effort goes into growing food, and then I owned a restaurant, and just the massive amounts of food that was getting thrown away. People order 4 or 5 things just to taste it, and then oh no, nothing was wrong. I just wanted to taste it and throw it away. And so I wanted to start regenerating soil with that food waste. And so I tried to get everybody I know to buy a farm, and nobody wanted to buy a farm. So I realized I was the one I was waiting for. So I went and got a farm. And at the time, my husband was undocumented when we got married. And at the time I wanted to get a farm, it was very hard for us. We couldn't get a loan. Because of his status, we could not get a loan. And so this all was took a long time. And finally in 2018, I got my farm and we started regenerating the soil. We started bringing the food from the restaurants back. And I quickly just realized that the whole vegan thing was like a lie. And I'd been vegan since the womb, or vegetarian since the womb, and vegan most of my life. And there was no vegan food. So I'm here, I got this farm, and I'm like, okay, well, we need to get some fertilizer. What kind of organic fertilizer can we get? And I'm like, okay, there's chicken poop. Let me find out. Where's that coming from? Oh, it's coming out of like Tyson or Purdue factory farms. Okay, well, let me see.
How is that organic, right? When you're looking at an organic compost. How is that organic?
So then I'm like, okay, well, let me get there's a liquid fertilizer supposed to be so good. And they're like, oh yeah, it's made from fermented cow blood. And I was like, oh, where's the cow blood coming from? And they're like, it's out of the consolidated feedlot system. It's from processing facilities in Mexico. And I'm like, oh, okay. Then I'm like, blood meal, where's that coming from? It's out of the consolidated feedlot system in America. So I start going through all the organic fertilizer options, and I come to realize that none of them are vegan. Like there's like, it's there. Yes, there's some kelp, but we're not going to just like rape the oceans in another way to get enough fertilizer to grow our food. And so I'm like, I need a cow. I need my own cow so I can make my own fertilizer, and I can treat the cow. My farm's nothing's going to die on my farm. It's going to be amazing. And I get a cow, and her name is Una. And Una is bred already when I get her. And so she has a baby, and she has this huge udder, and the baby's only feeding off of the two front nipples because her udder like hangs low and he can't quite get to the bottom ones. So we're milking off the other two udders, and I'm feeding my toddler. I'm breastfeeding my baby, and I'm feeding my toddler organic oat milk in a Tetra Pak from Costco there. And my baby's like a year and a half, and I breastfed my other baby for 2 years. I'm like, look at me, 3.5, almost 4 years, just breastfeeding nonstop. I'm such a good, like I'm having some like ego moment where I'm acknowledging myself for breastfeeding for so long, and how this is like gonna just making their microbiome so healthy. I'm having this thought, and then I open the fridge because Rio wants milk, and I take out the Tetra Pak, and I see this quart or half gallon wide mouth jar with Una's milk that my uncle had milked off in the fridge. And it's in a glass jar. And it's like, I'm looking at the Tetra Pak, which is like for sure has chemicals and all this stuff.
And multi-layer, right? They're not recyclable.
They're not
they have
recyclable.
So many issues. Like you can recycle them in certain specialty centers, but almost no one does. So it's just trash, and it's full of other oils. I mean, when you start to look at the ingredients in the nut milk, it's not just nut milk. It's not like seed oil and all this other stuff too.
So I'm looking at this glass jar that's like literally came from my cow, and I'm a vegan. And I'm holding my baby who's breastfeeding, and my toddler's asking for milk. And I just thought, well, how could my breast milk be gold and Una's breast milk is causing cancer and filled with pus and blah, blah, blah. That's not make any sense. And so I decided to start feeding my kid secretly raw milk from my cow, because I'm thinking that's got to be better. It's got to have all the microbiology to defend against this exact environment that he lives in, because she lives right here. And that was just like one. And then, so multiple things led me to that there is no vegan food, and that plant food is not like the way and the light. It's not necessarily more ecologically correct. And it destroys ecosystems. And this is not to say that like factory farming is good. What I'm saying was, I realized that there's not a way to just shift what's on your plate and now I'm going to be good for the environment. It's really about eating what's in your environment. It's really about what is locally available, and being a conscious, awake person who shakes the hand that feeds you, who is on the small farm diet. And I realized small farm diet you can't be vegan and grow all your own food. There's actually the calories in, calories out doesn't work unless you have big machinery and you're using petrol calories to do so. And so calories in, calories out, like nothing made any sense. And I realized there's 0 indigenous cultures that have ever chosen for my husband's indigenous. And he was like, vegan is like some very privileged conversation. He's like, in a world where you can choose to only eat one thing, he's like, but it's not environmentally better. It's just you've been taught that. And he was right. And so I shifted. But then once I shifted on something that was such a profoundly held belief around veganism, I realized that I didn't know what I believed about anything. That I was clear that I believed so passionately. My husband said I was radical. I was radicalized. And I don't know, maybe he's right. I don't know. But I believed that veganism was the right way forward. I believed it was less harm, less death, less everything. And as I started farming, I just realized that wasn't true. You know, we're growing avocado trees and we're protecting them. We're killing thousands and thousands of ground squirrels for avocado toast. And I'm thinking, okay. And I'm not saying we shouldn't grow avocados. I'm just want to be clear that there's death on every plate and there's no way around that. And that really broke open my mind, my heart, my ideas in a way that I'd never been broken open before. I was just very like your typical kind of coastal liberal city. I mean, I grew up on a farm, and so not like exactly a city dweller, but like I had the ideas that I grew up in around New York. I grew up and then I moved to LA, and I just had a very kind of ideas that were formulated in cities, and they weren't conducive to the farm. And so as one idea fell away, another and another and another, and over the past 5-6 years, honestly, my whole identity has changed, everything I believe. And I really did go from a vegan chef to a Texas cattle rancher. And that's a crazy transition.
Now, while you've done this, you've still maintained a vegetarian diet, from what I understand?
Yeah, I am a vegetarian. I do bone broth, and I have taken liver supplements when I was pregnant.
So how do you navigate that personal evolution and potentially even the public scrutiny that can come from having this kind of dichotomy in your personal and professional life?
So I'm always been a vegetarian. I've never eaten meat. So I don't think that meat is bad. I just don't yet relate to meat like food. And there's a lot of ideas. I mean, as we find out that seed oils are really causing all this inflammation and animal fats are not, you know, the other night, I was asking my son, I was like, you can't just have bread for dinner. You need to have some protein. And I'm trying to get him to eat ground beef. And he was like, well, I want bacon. And my brain was like twitching because I've been told bacon and eggs is going to give you a heart attack. Like it's not good. Right. But is bacon from my own pigs, from my own farm with no nitrates? Like, is that worse than the beef? I don't know. But I'm realizing that all these ideas that I thought I knew 100%, I don't know. But I don't yet relate to beef as food or pork as food. But it doesn't mean that I never will. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. I mean, that is one of the things I recognized too when I made a transition from eating being an omnivore to mostly eating a vegetarian diet. Like suddenly it actually happened somewhat quickly that I stopped seeing meat as food. Like it didn't really look appetizing anymore.
Yeah.
And now I've added back some chicken and some fish, but have not been able to bring myself to consume beef again. And largely my perspective was also eat for the earth, right? Eat for the things that have a lower impact. My main criticism for, animal farming and animal foods is the CAFOs. And it's almost like not enough of us are doing everything right yet, right? I still purchase meats for my entire family. My husband eats all sorts of meat. I buy them from a regenerative farm. It ships to me as opposed to being something that's more local, unfortunately. But that means I have a year-round freezer, half chest full, of these products that are more healthy, that are better for my family than the stuff that you might go to Costco and buy, right? Or to the grocery store.
That consumer, because for those of us who are producing regenerative meat without the consumers, it's like doesn't work.
Right. It doesn't. And, it does cost more, and there is a balanced effort in their work. You mentioned things like rodents, which you cover in the book, like the explosion of squirrels when you started doing a certain type of farming. And then you're like, oh gosh, I need to somehow mitigate this. How are we going to do that? Trapping and moving through nature, trying to do things in the most friendly way while also not trying to increase death on the farm. But the reality that you confront is, now you have German shepherds entering your property and taking apart some other animals that weren't supposed to be part of the food chain. And it's like there's these unaccounted for challenges that you face as a farmer, in addition to the things that you might expect. And the lay public doesn't really understand that. They don't, run into the mice in the field that have made a home at the base of your crop. They don't understand that.
When I was a vegan and I used to see these videos of farmers using a forklift to try to pick up a cow, I think we've all seen these, and our reaction is, this is abuse. But what I didn't know is that if a cow is down for 24 hours, they'll die. They get like a necrosis, like their legs start to fall asleep and they can never stand up again. And so if a cow is down because she's tired, because she's exhausted, because she has a sprained ankle, you have to get her up. And getting up an animal that weighs 1,000 to 1,500 pounds, there's no other way. And so just the other day, we were trying to save a cow. She did actually have to be put down, but she was my third cow I ever had. She had Olivia. I was desperate to save her. And I was thinking, as my husband had the forklifts and we have these clamps that go on her hips to try to pull her up from the back to get some weight off her legs so she can put her legs down, and we're massaging the leg that's her and all this stuff. I was thinking, I never thought that there might be a reasonable reason that people were lifting up a cow with a forklift. I just seen something that looked abusive. I've also picked up a cow with a bucket I had a cow get in labor and get upside down on a hill. And cows, if they lay upside down, their stomach can get twisted and they can die. There's things that can kill cows that we don't think of as like being a big deal. Just like laying down is a big deal if they don't get up, because they can't lay down for any extended period of time because of how small their legs are compared to the size of their body. And so there's so many things as a farmer that as a vegan, I was really judgmental of. I would not just choose to use forklifts to move a cow out of the way for no reason. But now that I understand that, and that same cow, Olivia, that had the injury from the bull and we were trying to save her, we did save her several years ago. She got milk fever and couldn't get up. And we picked her up with a tractor for 6 hours every single day and did a strap hammock out of straps and held her up so that her blood flow could go to her legs, and then put her back down. We did that 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours of the night. So she was never more than 12 hours, on the ground, and we saved her. And it was a huge effort for 7 days to keep her. And then she lived, that was in like 2019 or 20. And now we did just have to put her down this last week, but she had 5 more years of life and all of this stuff. But if you looked at that from the outside and you were just seeing guys strapping straps to a cow, you might think that's abusive. And so there's like things that we don't understand unless you're dealing with it every single day. And my way of being has shifted around animals. My desire for them to be cared for has not. I'm the first to be, making sure that everybody's okay. And I have 100 plus, more than 100, probably 200 plus animals on the ranch, not including chickens. And so there is a lot to care for, and you do shift how you relate to every single animal. Every animal on the farm doesn't have a name as they once did. All the cows do, but not every goat has a name anymore, and things like that. And it is different to raise animals for meat, but there's still a massive amount of reverence and appreciation. And my kids have been there during harvesting. We don't hide death from our children. And I think my children have a much healthier relationship to death than I did growing up as a vegetarian.
Yeah. Well, this whole world of regenerative agriculture in particular somewhat relies on having animals responsibly tended so that you can rebuild the soil. It's not just blood meal. It's also their excrement. They poop where you want them to, or you can take that and put it somewhere else if you need to. I have friends in the horse business who, they have very fertile gardens because they've got that rich manure on site all the time, right?
For sure.
I know in our earlier conversation, we talked about the fact that your brother, Ryland Engelhart, who co-founded Kiss the Ground, was also instrumental in shaping your relationship and understanding of regeneration and soil, and also this community building around that. I wonder if you could detail a little bit of how he helped you on this journey, and if you have differing views about regeneration today, what they might be.
So my brother, Ryland, who co-founded Kiss the Ground and has been very instrumental in how I have viewed the world and regenerative agriculture, I feel like we live together here on the ranch. So we're doing this project together and we see the world very similar. And of course, we have different ideas about different things. He still has much more faith in the political system than I do. He's working closely, with he worked on the RFK campaign. He's working in Washington now, lobbying for soil health. He has a new organization that's a 501c4, like the lobbying kind of organization. And they're really, trying to lobby for soil health advocacy in this administration and future administrations. And so he and I philosophically don't disagree about regenerative agriculture. We disagree whether the government can make things better or not. And I'm a hard no, they cannot. And he still has faith that we can have some awesome change through government. And so that's the difference, I'd say.
I will tell you, I'm in the natural products industry. I go to Expo West each year, and I saw at Expo West this year a MAHA booth for Make America Healthy Again. And I just in viewing this, I'm like, well, I appreciate the movement. I have my own reservations and doubts about whether they'll make a difference. And I know you're also connected, for instance, to Kelly Ryerson, who's also been on this show. We've connected a few times in person as well as electronically. And she has big hope and faith that RFK can do some things that will actually move things forward so that we have less pesticides in our systems and that we are, not facing the same troubles we have with glyphosate today. And yet, what do we see? Like suddenly you have states basically ruling that you can't sue Monsanto because they don't want you to be able to go up and say, look, I have cancer now because of what you've done in these fields.
Cautiously optimistic when it comes to RFK. But I would say this, we are having a lot of conversations about food. We're having a lot of conversations about chemicals in our food, and we're having a lot of conversations about regenerative agriculture and the future of agriculture on a government level in like hearings after hearings after hearings. And I mean, your viewers are probably going to have a little throw up in their mouth for me to even say this, but I'm going to the Heritage Foundation next week to talk about soil health. And so I feel like the truth is that if you're still in a mindset of left and right, you're still in a mindset of like, there's a good guys and there's a bad guys, you're still in the psyop that has us divided as humanity, and we're not going to make the pathways forward that we need to. It actually has to be a coalition. And right now, for the first time in history, there's an opportunity for the coalition of both sides of consumers to be a soft landing for farmers to make those transitions that need to be made. And instead of us figuring out how do we do that, we're arguing with each other like, well, the left has always been about this and the right has done this. And I don't believe, and this is what I say to people. Would you like me to point out everything that the left did to destroy my business? how hard they made it to farm in California? Or do you want to work from this moment forward? And how do we have solutions? I have no illusions that right or left is better. I actually know that they're both corrupt and all funded, and it's all an illusion. And so we have to come together as human beings. And some people believe that you should be able to have an abortion, and some people don't. But those people could both believe that there should be no chemicals in our food. We could come together for the farmers and stop being divisive with each other and start, like, if someone, I just went to the Texas Family something association for small farmers. It was clearly left leaning. There was like groans when I said that next week we were showing this film at the Heritage Foundation. And would I not go there? Because I think, to me, like, this conversation is so much bigger, and we're being poisoned into extinction. We are being poisoned into infertility. And so the coalition has to be on both sides of the aisle, and we can't be focused on what we don't agree on. We have to come together for the farmers and be that soft landing of consumers, of a coalition on both sides of the aisle.
Well, this is one space where you and I absolutely agree, and I am as probably far left-leaning as you can be. That is that environmental issues should not be partisan, and we've made them partisan, which is bullshit. I mean, let's just call a spade, right?
And it is hard. Like, I understand it's easy to point fingers on either side about what someone has done, but it isn't. It should not be partisan, because it's affecting all of us equally, no matter 100%. Who you voted for.
Yeah. The sad thing, though, tends to be that in Republican environments where we have a Republican in that leadership position, that we have loosened restrictions when it comes to EPA. So some of the restrictions for clean air start to disappear. I have a friend who recently finished her dissertation, her PhD, specifically having to tackle an issue related to They put basically these machines on coal firing plants to capture the methyl mercury that would otherwise be oxidized into the atmosphere. It's something that is somewhat expensive to do, but it's kind of a one-time fee. You have to buy the machinery to do this, to make sure that the methyl mercury doesn't end up in the air, right? Simple solution, because when it does, it comes down in the rainwater. And when it comes down in the rainwater, you suddenly have fish that are so high in mercury that are in your streams and rivers and lakes that you can't consume them because they have too much mercury present in them. And it's methyl mercury, which is hugely, hugely toxic, especially to the brain, right? So, we loosen restrictions to the point where it looks like this regulation has been lifted so that coal firing plants don't have to do this. Meanwhile, burn, baby, burn, get that, energy cost down. Let's go ahead and do more coal, more gas, more oil, more fracking, more this, more that. And we've created a problem for future generations, or even those people who are looking to do subsistence consumption of foods, right? So these are big, huge problems, and they should not be politicized. It's like, we deserve clean air, we deserve clean drinking water, we deserve clean food, we deserve foods that are free of glyphosate so that we can have healthy environments. So, complete agreement, and we need to put enough pressure on these individuals from both sides of the aisles that change actually happens. And that's been, I think, the major frustration that people have across the board.
I fundamentally agree with you that the commons should be regulated, but ultimately nothing else should be regulated, in my opinion. And people that are not farming, people that do not own brick and mortar businesses in the real world, love to pressure about how regulation should be, where they never have to navigate those regulations yourself. And so, as someone who has run restaurants, run farms in the most regulated state that there is,
California, right? I get it.
I disagree. And I feel like there's significant evidence that the Nord Stream pipeline, we either were complicit in it or actually did it ourselves. There is plenty of evidence that we have done a lot of shady deals around solar and wind that aren't actually making a difference. And right now I have dear friends here in Texas. They have a ranch. They put all their money into it. They made it like self-sufficient, and they had chickens, they have cattle and everything. And they bought a section of a bigger ranch. And then the rest of that ranch got sold to a solar farm. And the solar farm was spraying something to keep the dust down while they were installing it. And whatever they were spraying contaminated all their ponds and their well. Their cows are dying, their chickens are dying, and they're leaving and they're moving to another state, and they're starting over, and they're devastated, and they're going to have to sue the solar farm. And so,
well, they have to prove that it came from them, and that process is also hard, expensive, time consuming, and it's lengthy. It's a lengthy process.
I want to say that in certain ways we love to regulate, in other ways we think like it's green, and so we want to just push that through. And we need to think about, in everything, the impact on air, water, soil. And then I mostly think everything else should not be regulated. And I think that the conversations in the Green New Deal are highly focused, or on most green policies coming from the left, on renewables, electric cars, and wind power, solar, batteries. And these things have their own environmental costs. And we will push many other countries into poverty, that more than already in poverty, if we try to put our regulations around oil and gas onto other people. We love to, like, we've stopped drilling in Los Angeles as of, I don't know, 2030 or whatever year it's going to be, but we're not stopping using oil and gas in Los Angeles. So I'm a fan of, if we're going to use these things, we should be mining them and doing them in our own backyard. If we want to use lithium, then we should be mining it in Texas or Arkansas or wherever. If we want gasoline, we should be mining it here at home and have it be the cleanest and best version. We are loving to outsource we love to make regulations in the United States, mostly fueled by the left, and then we still utilize dirty places around the world. So we're harming indigenous people and poor people and children all around the world. We don't have any intention of stopping using our cell phones, our computers, gas in our cars, lithium batteries. We have no intention, but we do love to regulate it and then push the production to places with less regulations and harm indigenous people, people of color, young people, and the water supplies in these other countries that do not have the power to fight back. And so I think we have to be more responsible and more resilient at home in every way.
Well, I don't disagree with you there. I think we need to also pay attention to the fact that, for instance, if you talk about California, we have some regulations that piss me off. Okay, don't get me wrong. I've lived here for most of my life, since I was about 13 at this point. And there's one that, just happens to be something I came across because I was looking at chemical pollution, right? And how chemical pollution can actually have a greater impact in some cases than things like driving 1 million cars for a year, right? One of those is tenting of homes in Southern California every time they're sold. Okay. It has become common practice because before you sell it, you got to make sure that you don't have termites, and termites are a problem here. So we tent the homes, and the chemicals they use to tent the homes are have a half-life that's much stronger than CO2 for how long they stay up in the atmosphere, right? And, they are released every time the home is untented. There's no system of capture of those chemicals, right? And it's akin to 1 million cars driving for 1 year on our roads, just what happens every year in Southern California, not even including Central California or Northern California. And we have technologies already that exist that could reduce our need to even use these chemicals in the first place. Like, for instance, heating the home to something like 160 degrees, which, especially in the summer months, isn't that hard to do if you were to put a few reflectors on the home, right? For a period of time, then you wouldn't have the issues of having those chemicals accidentally kill a family pet that got left behind or things along those lines as well, right? So there are other solutions in place. But the regulations are such that these things are kind of embedded technologies. They're industries that exist. And so we kind of don't want to look at it, right? So don't look at that problem. Don't look at this problem behind the curtain, but let's go ahead and work to make by 2030, there's no new cars sold in California that are not electric, right? So you're going to have people that go to out of state to buy a vehicle that are going to have a challenge registering it here, that might choose to move out of state too. Like these things are going to create other challenges because, hey, guess what? A work truck that you need is likely to be gas or diesel, right?
100%. The people I'm telling you about that I was talking about, they had a business of cutting the lines, like all the trees on the power lines, like in Northern California. That's what they did. And they started getting regulations like that they had to use electric chainsaws and by a certain year electric trucks. But that's not feasible for when you're cutting all day long and you have an hour and a half battery life, and then you have to have like 100 batteries in the truck and like all the things. It's just, and also I have an electric chainsaw. I love it. It's like my size, but it's not for every job. You know what I mean? There's a electric chainsaw jobs, and then there's my husband needs to go get the big chainsaw jobs.
No, and I think it's time and place, and it is common sense. There's some of these things that don't make a ton of sense. The fact that, for instance, the infrastructure doesn't really exist here from a power perspective for every home to have a place to plug in an electric car and also maintain air conditioning in the summer months. How many planned brownouts have we had because the wind was blowing, or because too many people were plugging in their electric cars and therefore we had a power outage, right?
And then we're going to use more coal power. Into your argument, we don't
have the infrastructure to manage the things because that infrastructure has not been built. So again, it's like these are complex issues. There's only so much cobalt that's being used in these electric cars. I'm not confident that we have perfected the technology to the point where we can really be in this space. So really, we need to be looking at broader industry. We need to be looking at food systems. It's not just cow burps. That's one part of the problem. I could say, again, like your earlier conversation when you were talking about all the food waste that creates methane. Food waste that creates methane is a major problem. It's also what makes your trash stink. So if we can compost virtually all of it, then we can create new soil and new life instead of just having stinky garbage and poorly regulated and poorly managed waste centers, right?
For sure. And there's going to be a lot of there's not a lot of money to be made by that. And so that's why it's not a big thing. The solar industry's making millionaires, printing millionaires right now. Like that is the reality. And so electric car industry, there's money to be made, but regenerative agriculture, composting, recycling your food waste, keeping your poop in the loop, these are not any kind of ways that anybody can make any money of like, can make some money, but not like, it's not the kind of thing that's going to get a big push. And that's my argument, that both sides of the aisle, there's all these subsidies for certain things, but are those things really helping the people, or are they just another way to make some other people rich? And that's how for me, it occurs on both sides of the aisle, that there is a lot of like these subsidies and carve outs for certain industries. And yes, I don't agree with certain industries and I don't agree with either side. I want there to be things for the people. And so in my opinion, there's a lot of conversation about inequity and farming, and that who's farming and who has access to land. I want to tell you, like, that could be solved right now with a banking product. Like, if we want to subsidize something, why don't we subsidize a 3% down mortgage for land instead of needing 30% to put down on land? I'm going to tell you, a lot more people would start farming if you could get on land for 3%. And then there's already tractor loans and stuff. Tractors, there is already 0% financing like Kubota has and stuff like that. But if you could get on land for not having to put 30%, you know how many more people would have access to land? Every different race, gender, creed will be going on land. I hear people in all spectrums of life wanting to be on land, wanting to connect with nature, wanting to grow their own food, but we don't have a banking product for that. Why? We literally print money out of thin air. Why don't we print money out of thin air to secure our local food systems, which is a national security issue, largely ignored by both sides of the aisle, because we are outsourcing every bite of our food to the cheapest hourly wage from all around the world, just like we do with our fashion, our tech, and so many other things.
Well, and right now you speak to a problem that we have because it's the cost of labor, right? And now we're in a situation where a lot of these farms are having laborers that don't show up for work out of fear of ICE raids and things along those lines. We're seeing that in California, in my area. I have personally seen that the selection of produce seems to be dropping. I'm having entire farming stands that don't show up at I go to the farmer's market every weekend on Saturday. And it's like there are some stands that just aren't showing up with their bounty because there aren't enough people there to pick the produce and bring it to the market. So these are real problems that we're having to face. And, as a country, as an entire populace, it's also something where we have to come together and create solutions. You write in your book that in your family, patriotism isn't optional. It's a core value. I think some people are having a challenge in a way connecting with their own patriotism, even those that may have been very patriotic in the past. We still put our flag out every holiday, but I got to tell you, some days I'm having a hard time in my stomach with it because of the fact that I'm seeing so much abuse in my community.
I've read pretty extensively about what I think about immigration. My husband was undocumented when we got married. I took custody of an unaccompanied minor, Osmar, and he just got married and moved away from us. But was with us for the last 5+ years, and feel like I've worked in hospitality and farming for the last however many 15 years.
You've employed people who are undocumented and running restaurants.
Yes, every restaurant in LA.
Every restaurant, yeah.
Although you're asking me to admit committing a felony or whatever. Yes. But I want to say 3 things. The system is broken. Both sides of the aisle has had the House and had both sides of the House and the presidency and has not made change. And I can tell you what the changes need to be pretty clearly from a very rounded perspective. The border does need to be secured. That's not racist. That's not crazy. That's just what a country needs. We need a pathway for the labor that we need. We do need the labor. And so we need a pathway. It cannot only be HB2 and HBA visas that are 6 months and 10 months. We need a long-term, low skill. And I want to be clear when I'm saying low skill, I don't mean it in a diminishing way. I just mean that we have these long-term permits for what's considered like for people that are doctorates and blah, 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 blah. But I'm saying for factory workers, for
manual labor. Really what you're talking about is manual labor.
Yes. Manual labor, farm labor, kitchen labor. These are the things. And so here's my proposal. We secure the border because the border is secure. Anybody that thinks the border is not secure isn't actually integrated in the community because the border is secured by the cartels. The cartels are charging $10,000 to $13,000 to cross the border. When you see all those lines of people and you're saying it's a humanitarian crisis, it is a humanitarian crisis. And the person that's abusing them is the cartels. And if you don't want that to stop, then you're part of the problem as far as I'm concerned. Because
this is something you wrote about in the book, which was news to me. I had heard about people paying fees to come through illegally from the borders, but not that was related to asylum seekers. I didn't think that was the case at all. And it made it seem, in reading your book, like that referred to basically anybody who came across the border, at least the southern border of the United States.
So can I give you an example? I'm not going to give names or people or whatever, but if you're in El Salvador or Guatemala and you want to, or Honduras, and you want to come, you're going to walk from there or take trains and multiple things, you are paying somebody to navigate through cartel territory all the way through the border to get up. And most of them, look, they're not walking at the port of entry. Where are you seeing people walking at the port of entry and saying, I'm claiming asylum, here I am? They're intentionally coming through where they know they're going to get caught, but they're already on U.S. soil when they say they're claiming asylum. They're also all being robbed at a certain point. Like there's literally a planned robbery accidentally along the way. These people are walking with everything they own. They're being raped and they are being robbed and they are living in fear, and over 100,000 people a year or something are not showing up on the other side of the border. We have currently there's currently 600,000 children. It was 345,000. And then I just recently heard that it's higher than that upon most recent audits, that we don't know where they are. It doesn't mean that they're
just
all
never made it. Right.
No. These are people that made it here and we just handed them out to a non-relative and we don't know, and we have lost track of them. They're undocumented, they're unaccompanied, and they're in this country with we don't know who, and we didn't follow them along. So where I'm standing is, it is a humanitarian crisis. Women are getting murdered and raped and so many terrible things. And if I am deeply rooted in the undocumented community in LA. I am married to someone who was an undocumented person in Los Angeles. He's now an American. But I have firsthand accounts of horrific brothers watching their sisters raped at young ages, horrific accounts. I've never met somebody that didn't pay. No, that's not true. I know one person who paid multiple times and thought that he could navigate it himself, and didn't pay after doing it multiple times. But I do not know a single person that didn't pay to cross, whether they were an asylum seeker or not.
Well, that's devastating. That's really terrible.
The wall is not racist. It's going to create some order. And I don't even care if it's a wall, it could be electric fence, it could be drones. What I'm saying is not having the cartels. We talk about defund everything else. Why don't we defund this criminal organization that is hurting children, bringing drugs into our country? And then on the other side, the doing nothing. So on the Republican side, it's like, I don't want anybody, replacement theory, blah, 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 American jobs. Those people are not farmers. They're not restaurateurs. I don't care. You meet a conservative farmer that has row crops and they're going to be like, they're not going to look you in the eyes when someone starts talking like that, because they all know what the reality is.
They rely on them for the strawberry picking, for the work.
Every one of us that eats food in the United States of America relies on an undocumented population to support the food prices that we're currently at. And if you don't think that, then you're disconnected. But on the Democrat side, when we are not making a solution, when we are not making a pathway, people that have been here for 25 years and maybe not 25 years, but because Reagan did kind of like make a sweeping thing. So most people, but no, I do know people that have been here and like they started with Reagan and then something happened and they couldn't, but mostly people that have been here, let's say more than 5 years, more than 10 years and paying their taxes and I don't think you should make a pathway to citizenship. You need to make a pathway to safety and security, that they don't have to be living in fear as they're paying Social Security, they're paying taxes, and they're contributing to society. So I believe we need to make a 10-year work permit that can be renewed one time, and for low skill or manual labor. And it's $10,000. That's less than the current price to pass with the cartels. And that money goes to our government. That money goes to cover many of the things that people claim are burdens on our society. And it's not going to the cartels. So this is a way that we fund the government. We give these work permits. People have to check in. They have to stay employed. They can't drunk drive or beat up their wife or whatever. And they get to be here and they get to go home with dignity, to see their daughter's quinceañera, go home for Christmas. They're not left 24 years without seeing their children. Their father is dying.
They're afraid to leave because they don't know if they'll
be
back again. Yep, is exactly the problem.
And so that is a humanitarian crisis too. People not knowing, having 4 grandchildren and have never met any of them, and watching their father die on FaceTime is also a humanitarian crisis that the Democrats are fully complicit with, because they have not ever done anything to fix it. And I don't think this is a partisan issue. We love to make it a partisan issue, but Obama deported more than anyone else has till yet. Trump might beat him he's definitely trying, but this is not a partisan issue. This is an issue of, we need the labor. We do need to be a good neighbor. I believe that Mexico and then Guatemala, Salvador, Honduras should be prioritized, because I think that our neighbors should have financial security and stability. It makes us more secure as a nation. And so I feel very strongly about this, and I write about it a lot. I write in conservative, I write for Epoch Times. I've written pretty extensively in Epoch Times about it. And people don't like what I'm saying. And then I write in more liberal magazines, and people also don't like what I'm saying there. But we have to actually have a compromise, come to a place in the middle. And that place in the middle is going to need more order, is going to need some security at the border. And it also is going to need a long-term solution for people that are here and for labor moving forward. That's not just a temporary visa for a 6-month season on a farm or whatever.
Yeah. Now, why do you preclude or not want to include a pathway to citizenship and some sort of a compromise solution like this?
Well, I think that DACA, everybody that's DACA should probably get citizenship, but because I know that it has to be something that both sides are going to vote for. And so we have to make compromises. Remember, there was a resolution.
It used to be that there was, marriage was a pathway to citizenship, but that seems to be something that is of the past. You have so many people who remain undocumented after becoming married and even having children.
No, that I beg to differ. They didn't do the work to do it, and it's a lot of work. But marriage is still a pathway to citizenship. I saw this article, I saw this interview with this woman the other day, and I was like, I don't understand. Why do you have 5 children and been married 11 years and your husband just got deported? Like, what were you doing? It takes time. It takes effort.
They just didn't go through all the hoops is what you're saying.
Yes. I mean, maybe not even started the hoops, because my husband got a work permit much before, and a social security number much before he became a green card holder, and then became American citizen. And it took us 7 years, but it is a pathway. I call that is not to be truth. Marriage should be a pathway to citizenship. You should be able to be with your family, obviously. What I'm saying is that if we just blanket and say everybody that's here that's undocumented, 11 million to 15 million to 21 million. There's about a lot of statistics out there. I don't know.
Which numbers don't agree. I know. It's like, who are you reading it from?
You're never going to get conservatives to agree to just like swipe this with a stroke of a pen. And what's very interesting is younger Latinos that were born here or came here when they were very young are largely left-leaning statistically. But older Latino, I was so indoctrinated into the left-leaning ideology that I assumed that my husband was liberal just because he was Latino. Like, I just literally assumed it. He's Catholic from Mexico. Of course he's not liberal. He was like, get in the kitchen.
All of my family on the East Coast are East Coast Italians, and you better believe 100%.
Oh, I'm an East Coast Italian. Pozzolo is my mother's maiden name. I'm an East Coast Italian, and Staten Island is the one red borough of New York City. So I believe that. But what I'm saying is I think there's a missed opportunity for Republicans with Latinos, because culturally there is a huge drift towards conservative values, but has largely been left out of the conversation when it comes to the conservative party. So I would say that both sides are culpable. What's happening right now in LA and in California, it's not happening here in Texas, not at all. So I have no relationship to it, personally, is disgusting. I'm here in Texas, and literally we're searching for bodies in the river with Mexicans and white people and Black people. And they have, at the Hunt store, which is the worst messed up area right now, there's a Texas flag, American flag, Texas flag, and a Mexico flag flying on the flagpole. My day-to-day experience here, there's no ICE anywhere. There's nothing is like that. So I don't have experience with it, but I do have restaurant owner friends that have called me and were like, what are they doing? They're raiding restaurants on Friday night. And so I don't know, but I suspect it's a strategy for division. I suspect it's to cause inflammation. I suspect it's from us to be distracted from something else. Whenever something doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense politically for Trump. It doesn't make sense nobody was nobody. It's there's 75% approval for DACA kids to get citizenship. There's or some pathway to stay here. Nobody was we need to tackle the guy on the corner selling watermelon. Literally nobody. So it's not a good look for anybody. So I don't actually know. I feel like it's a false flag, or something else is happening.
Increased division with California. I mean, Trump does have a thing against Gavin Newsom. That's kind of evident, you know?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it also can be like anything to stop us from looking at pictures of what's happening in Gaza. Literally anything to stop us from looking at what's happening in Gaza.
Or from talking about the Epstein files.
Or from talking about the Epstein files. I agree. And so what I would say is that whatever we're thinking it is, we probably don't know, but it doesn't make sense. It's not a good political move, and it's not what he ran on. It's not what he's committed to, and I don't think it's what Americans are committed to on either side of the aisle. But I do.
One of the things that you said recently on an Instagram post had to do with war and the fact that we seem to be funding more wars than we ever anticipated, and that we are, funneling resources outside of the United States to these efforts against Iran, or, the war in Ukraine is still not over, and we have given so many supplies and financial resources to that arena as well. So when does it stop, right? When does all of this warmongering stop? I think about something like the southern border and the cartels. Understanding how strong the cartels are in Mexico, we would essentially be initiating another war if we were to attack that issue in that way. How would it be fought? Who knows? How much of this could be managed politically with the Mexican government? Who knows? But there are so many, I think, uncertainties around the world with our hand in some of these pots that it creates this, I think, sense of complete lack of control or ability to influence by most Americans. So what I think we see at the same time is a certain disengagement with politics, because it's like, well, what can I change? I'm obviously not able to stop us from sending bombs to these countries instead of aid. Like, why can't we send the aid that was needed instead? It's so maddening. And as somebody who I probably come from an empathy first perspective when it comes to a lot of this stuff, right? Like that's the thing that drives a lot of my personal desire to talk about these big issues. Because even if, I can't directly make an impact, I'm going to do something, get people thinking, even just talking about it with you today. Because I think that can be part of what initiates an idea shift, a movement away from the things that we might have been doing wrong towards something that is better for everybody.
But I want to acknowledge you. Literally on the spreadsheet next to your podcast, my old assistant, I hired her to go through all my old podcasts and do it. And literally it says "too woke?" or yes. And I was like, and then I put on the spreadsheet, no, go ahead. But I want to acknowledge you for being somebody that's like, this person's ideas don't necessarily align with mine, and I'm interested to have this conversation with her, because she's someone who maybe squarely 100% agreed with me before, and now she doesn't. So this is an interesting conversation. And so I just want to acknowledge you for being someone in the world that doesn't shy away from a conversation that going into you're not going to agree. And I just want to say that is a beautiful quality. And it's one that I want to teach my children, because it's getting more and more rare in this world.
Well, you write about this in your book. You write about the fact that you have maintained friendships with people who are across the aisle, and that some of them might make fun of you for one reason or another. I mean, I have the same situation. Somebody I consider a dear friend who's an actor in LA is as right-leaning as I am left. And he teases me and will say things like, oh, well, just go get in your Subaru, you blue-haired lesbian. I'm not a lesbian, but he just jokes around because I'm on that left side, right? And then I tell him, well, you're too old to be a has-been actor, so, good luck making it or something. And we just rib each other. Right. And I think that that's a healthy way to kind of get over the uneven bumps in our friendship. But I also consider him one of my most valued friends. He's a cheerleader and supporter for everything I'm doing in this space of sustainability in another way, or through this podcast. And I appreciate that. I appreciate him. I appreciate you. I think that we need to have more discourse, not less. We need to have more conversations that are sometimes uncomfortable, not less. And it seems that through bite-sized social media things, like we're all just kind of aggravated all the time. We get used to it. And so instead of listening to one another, we just think we know everything that person's about without really ever getting to know them. And anyway, that's my soapbox for the day, probably, because I think there are especially as it comes to this kind of common sense approach to agriculture. You and I agree more than we disagree, definitely, right?
Yes.
I want to see real solutions in place. I want to be able to see real live food on people's plate and not something that just came out of a box microwaved.
And I'm out here doing that, trying to create the real solutions. And so most people that are very angry on the internet, that have a lot of time, and I don't know, I make up this because I don't know my trolls in real life. I've not met actually one of them I've met in real life, but I don't know what they're doing like with their life, that they have time to tell me every single thing that I'm doing is wrong or bad. But I don't have time. Like, I have a beautiful family that I love. I have a beautiful farm. We're trying very hard to make this project work. I'm releasing a book. I'm trying very hard to have that get out into the atmosphere and help us, in other ways, have people come and buy meat and, see other ways that the book can interact with people. I don't have time to be angry. I feel like I was led this place through a deep spiritual connection. I could be wrong. It could not be true. This is what is my truth. But I love anybody who's true to their truth. And many people's truth is different than mine. And so I want to be in the conversation, and I want us to be able to share ideas, because a lot of ideas that I was totally closed off to actually make sense to me now, but I would never have been able to hear them in a different time. But it was only honestly, like, I love that you have that friend. That I didn't have any, besides my family in Staten Island, I didn't really have like day-to-day conservative friends at all in LA. Like my whole world prior to moving to Fillmore, everybody kind of agreed the same. We all had this, we believed everything the same. And COVID was very shifting for me, and mostly because I was just not vaccinated ever in my life. I'd never been vaccinated. So I was pregnant, I'm breastfeeding. Like, there was no chance I was going to take that injection. And this weird thing happened with friends that I'd been friends with for my whole life. I thought there was nothing that could come between us. And what it taught me is I want to be able to navigate situations like that in the future in such a way that love can still be present, and that we don't divide, that we see each other with empathy and compassion, and we can say, oh, I can get it. You've never had a childhood vaccine. You've never had any vaccine. Don't go to the hospital. You had your kids at home. Like, I totally get why this wouldn't resonate with you. And I can be like, and I totally get that you're a school teacher and you need this, and they want you to do this, and you feel good about it, and blah, 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 and that you're going to make that choice. And I can say that I got hurt, and I said things that maybe weren't as nice as I could have said it. And I don't ever want to be that place that I was during COVID, of hurt and separated from people I love over ideology. I want the soul that I am and the soul that they are in our hearts to always have a connection, even if our ideas differ. Because as I've seen over the last 5 years, my ideas on so much have changed, but my heart and my commitment, my foundational commitments to earth, to the animals, to my family have not.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what you're essentially saying is that your core hasn't really shifted. It's how you see the structure around the world, like political structure, I think, more than a lot of things.
And nature, and how I see nature.
So as we get ready to close today's episode, I wanted to offer you the opportunity to provide a snapshot of what your vision for Sovereignty Ranch in Texas is. I understand it's a model, I think, for others to potentially follow. And it's also a deeply personal experiment, perhaps, in self-reliance. It's more than that. And agritourism, right? Like you're working, I saw some examples of hosting weddings on the site, and things like tiny homes and along those lines that can be rented by individuals that are curious to come through and explore it.
Yeah, so we're creating I no longer want to get something that I'm going to scale up and sell for millions of dollars, like whatever kind of vibes that I was doing with my restaurants in LA. I want something that's small and beautiful and creates a ripple effect that inspires other people to do things that are small and beautiful. And I think that in our local environment, we can make the most impact. And I think that we all feel somewhat impotent when we look at the structures of the world and how messed up everything is. But I can look out at this 200 acres. I can live in community in this 200 acres. I can serve 100% regenerative and organic food every single weekend with the highest quality and the highest intentions. And I can go on a farm tour with the guests and share my heart out about regenerative agriculture. So we have 40 beds on the ranch. We have a restaurant on the ranch. We have a venue on this field. You can do small festivals here. You can do yoga retreats. We do church retreats. We do men's retreats, women's retreats, couples retreats, any kind of thing, soil classes, all different kinds of farming education. And we have a conference room for 300 people or a yurt for 50 people, like depends on what your size is. And we really want to be the ripple effect in the world. We want you to come here. We want you to eat a meal that was made with love, grown on the farm right here, and feel the coherency of what it feels like to eat local food and see that food growing on the field or in the greenhouse. And I want you to take that home with you. And I hope that then you're inspired to shop at your local farmer's market or support a regenerative farmer near you or mail order from a regenerative farmer that's a little bit further away from you. I mean, we rely on mail order for a lot of things. And right now it's been really hot. We're not shipping meat until it cools down a little bit. But my tallow balm, or I make like eye shimmers with tallow, and we, chapstick and bug repellent and deodorant and all those things. I depend on people to buy those mail order over the internet. So support people that are doing things that you're inspired by, because it literally only works. And you might not be inspired by me. You might be like, she's definitely voted for Trump. I'm not going to buy her tallow shimmer from a Trumper. But
newsflash, a lot of people in the farming community did and are supporters. So it's like we have
that's
to.
That's not newsflash to me.
I know, but for some of the people listening, it's like I have interviewed so many people in the regenerative space. I've had Josh Tickle on for now. We've interviewed, talked to him about Common Ground for example. And one of the things I asked him during that interview was, what his perspective was on the politics of what the food systems really are, right? Like, where are we with the political dynamics? And he really came through with just a very diplomatic answer about the fact that we all need to eat. We all need to do these things every day, and it should not be political issues. And frankly, we need to be more concerned with the fact that the farmer is getting 8 cents on the dollar of the profits that come from the food systems, and they're yet squeezed with their margins every day and asked to do more with less. So, we really need to change some of these dynamics. And I completely agree with that, right? I think having been somebody who grew up on a hippie commune where we tried to do a lot of our food procurement ourselves, where we raised rabbits and we raised chickens and we had, animals get into the hen house and decimate them. You experience like the challenges and realities of running a small farm that supports a single or 2, 3 households. Yeah. And it's like, this changes how you see things, right?
Yes.
You do need to understand that some of these things are not political, that there's no situation in which a food can be completely vegan. Even when you look at food ingredients, it's, how many parts per million of fly parts are in that flour? It's not zero.
It's not zero. I just want to invite one other perspective on why it may be that a lot of farmers or lean in the right. You have to imagine what it is to have a job where 85% of us have an off-farm job that we're working 8 hours a day, and then we're coming home and working another 8 to 10 hours a day on the farm, and we're leveraging year over year, we're leveraging our land every year to get to harvest. And this level of stress and this level of white knuckling it just to hold on to the family land and just have the privilege of feeding America is really hard. And then we look out and we see people on the news and they're talking about, I had to work for 3 hours before I got my first 20. And, it occurs like the world has completely forgotten how hard it is to farm. and how hard it is to provide the food to America. And so I think that farmers feel left by the left, if I was to guess. And I think there's always been a divide between the organic consumer and the organic farmer. And I think that Acres struggled with that, like when they canceled Joel Salatin at the Acres conference. They have the biggest ecological. And then people are like, wait, we're not, farmers are like, I don't want to come to a conference if you're canceling Joel Salatin. And, and this is before the current ownership of Acres, and they've brought Joel Salatin back to their thing. But I think that there's always been this like two sides. And I think right now is the first time that the Republican Party actually all of a sudden is super interested in food and chemicals in our food and all this stuff, whether it's real or not, it's happening. And so I'm going to take every opportunity to get in front of every senator I'm happy to go to the Heritage Foundation, happy to go on their podcast. Like, as much as we can talk about soil health is the best thing that we can do. I will go on every podcast that I can, no matter which side of the aisle they are, and evangelize that healthy soil is 73% the same DNA as the microbiology in you. We are meant to eat of healthy soil, whether you believe in the Bible and that God picked up some soil and made man and blew his breath into it, or you believe in evolution. Either way, I'm telling you that 73% the same DNA, and we are only 10% us. Like when you do a scrape swab of your mouth or something, it's 10% is your DNA and 90% is your microbiology. And that microbiology is 73% the same as healthy soil. We are meant to eat of healthy soil. We come from it and we need to get back to it. And a lot of the ideas in the green movement in this day and age have created apathy because we think that we're the scourge, we're the problem, we're the plague on the planet. And I want to remind every person listening to any podcast, no matter who you voted for, you belong here. And you need to interact with nature as if you are the keystone species, because you are. Step into your role and interact with nature. You cannot just go to the cities and separate from it and try to out-science it. We have to re-engage because we are part of the ecosystem. And I don't want people to think they don't belong here. And I think that's the underlying message for many years that I was receiving, whether I was hearing it wrong or not, from the environmental movement, is that we are the problem. And in that conversation, we start to think, well, it's okay if we get poisoned because we're really bad, but we're not bad. We just have to shift our relationship with nature.
Well, I think you've revealed one of the dark underbellies of any movement. Reality is that there are those on either side of the aisle, but yeah, there's better ways to do farming, and you can do so regeneratively. Animals are part of that too. We need to do better. So yes. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been my pleasure. And I hope that you'll be willing and able to come back.
I will. And everybody, my book is out for pre-order. I don't know when this is coming out, but it's out for pre-order, and it'll be out on Amazon and on Acres USA website and my website on the 25th of September, but it's out for pre-order now. You can order it if you'd like.
I'll be sure to include a link with show notes. And as always, I'll put it in my Amazon shop as well, because I believe you can do the pre-orders now for $9.99 on Amazon.com for delivery to your Kindle.
For Kindle. Yeah, just for Kindle. They have to have the physical book to put it on because they have to check it. And so right now only Kindle, but it'll be in the next couple of days, it'll be for the book too.
And just a reminder for those who do care about the environment deeply, a single page of paper can be as much as 2 gallons of water to process. So if you can buy on your digital device, you get no delay. It's directly in your inbox as soon as it's available. And you're also being kinder to the environment.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Mollie.
Thank you.
I so appreciated Mollie joining me today to share her views, sitting with complex questions that are both personal and political. So whether you agree, disagree, or find yourself somewhere in between, your journey into regeneration, to family life, and to deep inquiry is something that we should all be focused on. I personally look forward to following the continued evolution of Sovereignty Ranch and to listening to how Mollie's voice grows and adapts and even changes with time. The fact is that none of us should be completely stagnant. We should continue learning. This is something that should be part of each of our DNA. So to all of those listening and watching, if you enjoyed today's discussion, I encourage you to check out Mollie Engelhart's new book, Debunked by Nature. It's available now on Amazon for pre-order on Kindle, and you can always set an alarm to review it again on September 25th, I believe. I'll include a direct link with show notes and on our blog page for this episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep learning, because when we approach learning with care and a collaborative heart, we create a better world, and we do that together. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Care More, Be Better, a podcast for social good. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and share with your friends to help us reach more people and spread more social good.